Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Unarmored Talk podcast, where we will have real life conversations that helps you develop an accurate way of thinking. And the way we're going to do this is by gaining a better understanding of how feelings, emotions, and thoughts can influence the outcome of a personal or professional challenge. I'm your host, Mario P. Fields, and today's guest is Frank Gus Biggio, the author of The Wolves of Helmet. And if you're viewing this, you can see it. If you're listening to this, you can go to our YouTube channel and take a look at it. The author of The Wolves of Helmet. He's also, and that's Afghanistan, by the way, Helmand province in Afghanistan. He's also a United States Marine Corps veteran. Gus, welcome to the show. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, Sergeant Major. And, there's some habits that you can't break a Marine of. So I know you introduce yourself to everybody as Mario, but to me, you're Sergeant Major Fields.
Yes.
So, and before we start talking, I want to thank you for having me here, of course. But I want to tell your listeners how we met. So in 2016, I was living in Dubai, and I always loved going to the Marine Corps ball there. The Marine detachment at the embassy and the consulate put on some fantastic balls. And in 2016, there was this sergeant major who spoke, and he nailed it. He left the audience standing with a standing ovation. They were like, "Man, that guy is something else." And everyone was lining up to talk to you afterwards and say what a great speech that was. And we had a couple moments. 2 years later, I was very privileged to give the speech at the exact same ball. And a lot of people said, "Hey, remember that Sergeant Major from 2 years ago? Are you going to be like him?" And I was like, "Man, if I can be a fraction of how good that guy was, then I will have won." And so I was so pleased to connect with you probably about 2 years ago on LinkedIn. And then it makes perfect sense that you're running a company called Global Inspirational Speakers, because that first time that we met and I heard you speak, you just knocked it out of the ballpark, and you really set an example for everyone to aspire to.
No, I appreciate it. I really do. That was a memorable ball. And, again, I appreciate it. But there's a little bit more about you, though, than the Dubai ball. So, give us just a couple of minutes about the man, the author, the myth, the legend, Gus.
Sure. I love all those accolades. So I served in the Marine Infantry after college in the mid 1990s.
Semper Fi.
Did a little less than 5 years and loved every moment that I did. I was a rifle platoon commander, a heavy guns platoon commander. Then I was a rifle company XO. And for a brief period of time, and after that post-deployment period, I was a company commander. I never wanted to be a career officer. I just wanted to serve my country and move on and do other things and be a strong advocate for the Marine Corps as a civilian, which I did. Ended up going to law school and worked in different jobs in law and finance, mostly in Washington, D.C., but a little bit in New York. After 9/11, I was aware of what was going on, following the news. I was really proud of all my friends who were still serving and the things that they were accomplishing. They were climbing through the ranks, company commanders, battalion XOs, OPSOs. And around 2006, I sort of got the itch and I said, "Gosh, I want to serve one more time. I want to contribute. I'm proud of what these guys are accomplishing, and I'm a little bit envious because here I am sitting in a law firm, and it's interesting, important work at times, but it doesn't have the impact that I want to give." So I rejoined the Marine Corps with a reserve unit called the Civil Affairs Group, which was based out of Washington, D.C., with the intention of getting back in the action one more time. Now, I would be really neglectful if I didn't say anything about my wife. So in the lottery of life, I hit the jackpot when it comes to my spouse. So she's smart, she's sexy, and she puts up with me. But she also understands me. And she understood the importance of the Marine Corps and the sense of service that I had. So it was understood. She's like, "Okay, I get it. You want to do this. It's important. You can do it." Now, there were a couple caveats. One was that I do one stint. I go to the hot spot once, and then I come back and settle back down. And the other thing was, she said, "This is your midlife crisis. So, don't expect that you're going to get a fancy red sports car or a motorcycle or, start up a band or something like that. So this is it." And I kept my end of the promise.
Well,
So,
that takes a lot. Here you are, what, your 30s?
so at that time,
Yeah.
when I was recommissioned in the Marine Corps, I was 37 years old.
Yeah, so
And
so you're in late 30s, right? You got a nice job, and all of a sudden you're like, no, I want to go back and give some more. You got to propose to your wife to. My proposal to you is I want to go back into the Marine Corps.
yes, and it's a tough discussion to have,
Right.
and a lot of people's spouses wouldn't support it, and I don't begrudge them for that. But
Right.
again, that's where we talk about the lottery of life and how I won with that. So
That's awesome.
I ended up joining the civil affairs group. Really fantastic unit, and for the time I'd been out of service and what I wanted to do and what I had done in the intervening period, this was the exact right unit. They had some stellar Marines from the
Right.
colonel down to the junior Marines, and they were folks who were lawyers at the Justice Department. We had a CIA analyst, a NASA rocket scientist, teachers, firemen, business leaders, congressional aides. We had a candidate for Congress. So these guys are just. I was in really good company. Ended up getting activated and deployed to Helmand Province in 2009.
Okay.
My team, that was 6 Marines and 1 corpsman, was attached to 1st Battalion, 5th Marines. And we went to a place in Helmand Province called Nawa, which was a violent, lawless, chaotic place when we arrived. By the time we turned it over to the next battalion, 3-3 out of Hawaii, led by Colonel Matt Baker, the place had undergone a complete transformation. Local government was in place, solving Afghan problems for Afghans. Schools were open, commerce was vibrant, and there was a real sense of security. So we had something to definitely be proud of when we left there. And the Marines and the next couple of Marines who were going through the rotation kept up that momentum and that forward progress.
Well, now that you mentioned it, and thanks for really, really letting us into your life and how you got back in the Marine Corps as an officer when served in a combat zone. Great points. It sounds like a successful deployment. I mean, everyone has a different definition of what successful looks like, but Gus, I'm going to imagine that it was a successful deployment. But let's jump right into the topic. Sounds like you was pretty easy, right? Make a decision. Let me join the Marine. Let me get back in the Marines. Do what I love. Do what's comfortable, right? Let's go. Let me get in. But now you're coming back home. It's 2009. You just finished this kind of kinetic deployment, right? That was some rough times, rough area. So now you're coming back home. How is this? How was your transition?
So it wasn't easy. I returned back to the lifestyle that in some ways, some people could say I was running away from. So it certainly wasn't my family that I was running away from, but it was the routine of being a corporate lawyer. And one of the reasons I joined was because I was like, man, I don't need to wear pinstripe suits and wingtip shoes. I want to wear camis and boots and do.
And I want to shave my head like Sergeant Major.
Exactly. So I came back, and the emotional high that I felt from what we accomplished as Marines in Nawa was hard to replicate back at the law firm. And I'm not talking bad about my profession because I'm back in this profession now, but there's not much of an emotional high about signing a share purchase agreement or a credit agreement or an intercreditor agreement, some of the transactional stuff that I do. It's just going through the motions and checking the boxes and getting things done for your clients. So all of a sudden I was back in that environment where previously for 7 months there was stress and there was strain and there was tension. And even when things were calm and quiet, you couldn't relax because all of a sudden they might not be calm and quiet at a moment's notice. And that's not the case in a law firm. So I had a hard time readjusting.
Gus, and I like how you highlighted the intensity when you're deployed and the sense of purpose of daily, which you never questioned, right? There was no ambiguity. But then how you come back home and you try to replicate that sense of purpose, and you couldn't. Like you said, it was difficult, and how you explained that was just I think it was something to highlight. Uh, so here you are now, figuring out that sense of purpose that I had, and that adrenaline, I can't replicate it back here in the law firm. How did you deal with that?
It took time. And I'm glad that you used that phrase, sense of purpose, because there were times where I felt in NAWA, I said, man, this is what I'm meant to do.
Right.
And there's the Marine aspect, and sometimes there's the fighting, the kinetic part about it. But my job as a civil affairs team leader was oftentimes to sit down with the locals, drink tea, and talk about what's going on in their mind.
Right.
It was to work with our non-Afghan civilian counterparts to help support infrastructure projects or other types of programs. And then it was obviously working with our Afghan counterparts to strengthen their system of local governance and provide opportunities for them to succeed. So I really felt that there was a sense of purpose. And
right.
As I said, when you come back to the law firm, you can be the coolest guy, you can be the smartest guy, you can be the most efficient guy, but oftentimes in a law firm, your value to the organization is very easy to quantify, and it's based on how you hit your billable hours quotas. So I felt myself really struggling with coming back to that reality. And there were times where, I felt guilty about going to war because my wife was home with our oldest son, and our second son was born. I didn't meet him until he was 3 months old.
Wow. So she delivered your second son essentially with you forward deployed.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Other folks who were deployed with us, their wives had kids too.
Right.
I'm going to talk about, a thing that I still think about a lot. My team chief, a gentleman named Bill Kerr, didn't have to deploy. He was a reservist. He has an incredible life story. Joined the Marine Corps at 34 years old.
Yeah.
Joined the Marine Corps at 34 years old. His drill sergeants were probably a decade younger than him, but he felt that sense of purpose. Joined the reserves with the Civil Affairs Group, did 2 deployments to Iraq, very intense deployments, Ramadi and Fallujah, I believe. Didn't have to go to Afghanistan, but he was drawn by that sense of service. And he was killed on August 13th.
Yeah. God bless. Yeah.
The last non-Marine Corps conversation that he and I had was where he was talking about the conversation he just had with his wife, and she confirmed that the pregnancy that he knew about before he deployed, that was going to be twins, he knew that he just learned that they were going to be girls.
Right.
And that was the day before he was killed.
Wow.
So that weighs on me a lot.
Yeah.
And it weighs on me that I had to call my wife, who was pregnant at the time, and say, I need you to go to Bill's funeral.
Right.
And, extend our condolences to his pregnant wife. So there's some guilt that comes with going to war.
Yeah. Wow.
Come back.
Yeah.
And this is sort of a message for all of us who have served. We are rightfully proud of what we've done. And there are things that we are entitled to, things that we have earned, things that we deserve, whether it's moral or whether it's set in stone in the law, things like the GI Bill. But there's also a moral gratitude that I think our fellow countrymen owe us. But we need to also be humble about ourselves. And coming back to the law firm, I think that I went through a period where I thought, why isn't everybody lining up outside my door and thanking me?
Say it ain't so. Say it ain't so, Gus. You telling everybody they need to come report in. I just got back. You guys don't know what it's like, right?
and I'm embarrassed to say that, but But
It's Unarmored Talk.
you're exactly right. So I had some frustrations,
Yeah.
and it was tough. And I was back in the routine, and I was polishing my wingtips. I was making sure my shirts were pressed, and my tie knot was just right. But I was like, geez, what have I come back to? So I was short-tempered. I was dismissive, and sometimes I took my frustrations and impatience out on the people who were closest to me, including my family.
And that's
So,
I was going to bring that up is how did that impact the boss of your house, your lovely bride, and your children?
it's hard to sort of quantify exactly how, and my kids were
Right.
too young for it to really resonate with them, but it took a strain, and there were times where we had some heated conversations, my wife and I kind of find myself oftentimes just wandering, whether it's out walking around late at night or driving around late at night. But then there was a time where all of a sudden there was kind of like this aha moment. And I hope that all of our fellow service members have or will have that aha moment. And what I mean by that aha moment is we need to come to the realization that we're not always going to be on the tip of the spear.
Right.
And that's okay. That's okay. Someone else will have their turn to be at the tip of the spear, because when it was our time, when we were called and when we answered the call, we went and we served well, but we need to keep moving on. And so we need to redefine our tip of the spear. And for me, redefining being the tip of the spear was being a good husband and a good father.
Yeah.
A specific moment. Go ahead, Sergeant.
Oh, no. I just like how you described how you were aware of your emotions, but how the aha moment is what I heard from you, is that you applied some thought that kind of got the emotions out of the way. And you said, hey, my thoughtful approach to this is what you just laid out, good father, good husband, but not at the tip of the spear. And so that was interesting how that influenced the outcome, if you will.
Yeah. So when I had this kind of epiphany moment, I think a combination of listening to Mick Jagger and a song that happened to come up on the radio and being with my two sons.
What was the name of the song?
Jumpin' Jack Flash. And the specific line that is, and I'll tell you the circumstances of how I was listening to that was, I was bound, I was washed up and left for dead. I was down on my knees and I saw that I bled, and I was kind of like, okay, washed up, down on my knees. And I was like, man, is that me? But I'd gotten up early one morning. This would have been in the springtime of 2010, so April, May, and wanted to give my wife kind of a rare weekend day to sleep in. So I put the two kids in the car and I was driving in Washington, D.C. And for me, Arlington Cemetery is kind of a magnet. And I go there a lot. And I like to walk around the headstones. It's a place that just gives me a sense of calm and a sense of solace. And I feel that I'm walking amongst my brothers and sisters in arms who have, many of them, given the ultimate sacrifice. And my team chief is buried there too. So on this particular day, I was going to just go to his tombstone in section 60. So when I was driving with the boys, it was a misty day. The sun hadn't risen yet, but there was just a little drizzle in the air, and I had the window cracked. And it's that time of year in Washington, D.C., where everything's blooming. And
which is beautiful, by the way.
It's beautiful. The cherry blossoms are blooming, the wisterias, the tulips that people plant. So there's color and there's smells. And it was a weekend, so there wasn't the rush hour traffic. So there's almost a calm sense about there, and just the subtle noise of cars driving on a wet street. And the kids were comfortable in their car. And I thought, gosh, I think I'm seeing and feeling things with clarity now. So we parked the car and walked through Arlington Cemetery and had my youngest son in the little strap-on holder there, and he quickly fell asleep. And, my oldest son was, he was about 2.5 years old by that time. So he was active and mobile and curious, and he had a little bit of a vocabulary. And we made our way to section 60, and I wound my way through some of the stones, and I came to where I was, and, I took a breath, and I just started talking to my friend, Bill Kerr.
Right.
And, it's kind of one of those private conversations that we always feel like we have to have. And my son, 2.5 years old, he looked at me and he said, "Who you talk to?" And I said, "I'm talking to my friend."
Right.
And my little kid said, "Okay." He said, "Okay." And that was it. I was like, all right, I know what's important, and I know who I need to serve and how I need to serve.
Right.
And I'm not a platoon commander anymore. I'm not a team leader. I'm not wearing the uniform anymore. But that's okay, because I'm still serving, and it's my kids, my wife, my family, my country in other ways.
Right.
And there was this sense of relief and calm with that. And that's the concept of, coming home and being home that I talk about in the book, and how home might not be a physical place, a house or an address, but it's a spiritual and a mental place.
Yeah,
and I
good point.
felt at that moment that I was home, and that home was a place that I had found and that my kids had found. So
no, that's a good point, Gus. I've never heard anyone articulate home for a service member could also be mentally home. So that's a good point.
Yeah. So, and I've doubled the number of kids that I have. So we have 4 kids now. And this thick head of kind of silvery gray hair used to be, nice and lush and brown, almost black. But and I think maybe the kids might have something to do with that. But again, it's that sense of, they are why I do what I do. And
that's that amount of wisdom that you have gained and developed over the last. We'll put you at 40, Gus. We won't tell the world what you're real. We'll put you at 40.
I'll take it. But what I mentioned was that I hope that our fellow veterans, or quite frankly anybody who's gone through a period of time where they've wondered what they need to do with themselves, I hope that they find their home, and that they find what they need to do with themselves. And I hope that home finds them.
Right.
And I would say that there's also there's ways that if people are struggling with finding that there are places and organizations that can help them with that.
Right.
I would say that one of the ones that I'm really proud of the work they're doing is called the Headstrong Project, that provides no cost counseling to veterans who are dealing with some issues, whether it's PTSD or just some other emotional struggles. And that's one of the groups that I'm really proud to say that I'm donating some of the proceeds of my book sales to them to support their efforts. So what I would say to folks is that there are groups out there and there are people out there who will listen. And to the extent you want them to talk, they'll also talk, and they'll help you and push you in the right way.
No, I appreciate that, Gus. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it from Gus. Combat was tough, but coming back home was even more tough. And, being aware of his emotions, essentially applying thought at the end, influenced his outcome, which is just incredible. And then you heard the resources that he put out there. Great organizations. Gus, if you can do me a favor, can you tell us, how do we get your book? Where can we find the Wolves of Helmand?
Okay, a couple ways to buy it. First of all, I'd love it if people would go to the website, which is wolvesofhelmand.com. The reason I want you to go there is because I've got a lot of galleries of some of the Marines that I served with. And it's important for me to point out that I wrote the book, but it's not just my story. It's a story of the Marines I served with from 1-5 and everybody else who supported that battalion. And I hope that when they read it, they say, yep, he nailed it. This is what it was like. And I hope that everybody else who served in Afghanistan or Iraq that has experienced some of the hardship that we went through, but also some of the camaraderie that we went through says, yeah, this is a real accurate depiction of what we did. And I also hope that for people who maybe don't have a personal connection to the military, but are curious about it, find that it resonates well with them. So wolvesofhelmand.com. I also have a Facebook page of the same name, The Wolves of Helmand, where I post a lot on there. And you can also get it on Barnes & Noble and Amazon. And I understand that it's in quite a few bookstores, nice. Barnes & Noble and some other local small bookstores. So I've been real pleased with the reports that I've gotten about how it's done in the first week. And, I'm just really tickled by the feedback I've been getting so far.
No, ladies and gentlemen, I read it myself. It's a great book. You got to go get it. Good read. Gus, thank you for coming on the show. Truly appreciate you.
My pleasure, Sergeant Major. So this was great to reconnect.
And, Gus was an officer, so I'm going to say, yes, sir. Hey, but ladies and gentlemen, if you got this video will be, this interview will be live on my YouTube channel, so you can watch it. All you got to do is subscribe at Mario P. Fields /YouTube. Google that, put in your search engine, however you want to do it, it'll come up. And then also, if you can just leave us a nice review and a little ranking there with the stars on Apple Podcasts, that would be much appreciated. Until next time, see you later.
Thank you, Sergeant Major.
You're welcome, sir.